There's something strangely predictable about the latest flurry of headlines suggesting that Tommy Robinson is threatening to sue Nigel Farage or Reform UK. It fits a lifelong pattern. Robinson is, above all else, a performer who depends on oxygen. If his name is not in the news, he ceases to exist politically. His dispute with Reform, whether real, exaggerated, or entirely synthetic, is simply another piece in place to place himself at the centre of the national conversation. It is showmanship dressed as grievance. It's also meaningless. Robinson has no real organisational base, no formal movement outside his online following, no stable ideological commitments beyond a permanent state of agitation. He has lived for years on the margins of respectability, hopping from one cause to another: anti-Islam agitation, anti-lockdown campaigns, pro-Israel advocacy, a sudden prison conversion to Christianity, a growing appetite for religious pageantry, and now a supposed legal challenge to the very party whose rise has partly displaced him. The man thrives on conflict, and the conflict doesn't need to be authentic to swerve and to serve his purpose. Farage, for his part, understands media craft far better than Robinson ever has. Reform UK is a populist party, but one that aspires to parliamentary legitimacy, and aligning with a character actor, a chaotic character actor who collects criminal convictions the way other people collect football stickers, would undermine that aspiration. So any distance Farage seeks to place between Reform and Robinson is not ideological but strategic. Robinson knows this, which is precisely why he pushes back. He can weaponize exclusion, he can claim betrayal, he can frame himself once again as the victim of a system that fears him, and it will do him no good. And none of this theatre should distract us from the far more serious issue: the exploitation of Christianity as a political costume and the deliberate engineering of a manufactured confrontation between faiths. Robinson's recent embrace of Christianity is not spiritually grounded, it's instrumentally grounded. His rallies in September and in December were strewn with crosses, crusader imagery, and slogans attempting to recast Christianity as a defensive tribal identity rather than a faith centred on mercy, humility, and service. And the Bishop of Kirkstall articulates this core problem. Robinson's conversion doesn't give him the right to deform the faith so that it serves his purposes rather than God's. That is precisely what is happening. He's taken Christian symbols and placed them inside a narrative of siege. He suggests that Christianity in Britain is under threat, that Islam is advancing, that the church has abandoned the flock. It is a fantasy vision of civilizational conflict built not on theology but on grievance. It's actually the extension of all his objections and objectiveness. Robinson's supporters echo this rhetoric, claims that Christmas markets have been renamed, or that British towns are becoming entirely Muslim, that Christmas is being avoided as a concept. These are anxieties looking for confirmation, and Robinson offers that in a ready-made script. Christianity is in danger, Islam advancing, national identity dissolving. It is inaccurate, it is reactive, it is profoundly irresponsible. Faith becomes corrupted when it's turned into a badge of antagonism and when it's dwarfed by ignorance. Christianity's historic vocation was not to become a political shield against newcomers. The church has always insisted that the cross is a sign of love, sacrifice, and service, not exclusion. Rowan Williams, the former and rather impressive Archbishop of Canterbury, was right to warn that migrants must not be imagined as hostile aliens. When Christian imagery is used to rally a crowd shouting about cultural enemies, something essential has been lost. And the irony is that the supposed confrontation between Christianity and Islam is not organic. It is manufactured by those who profit from division. Christianity and Islam have coexisted peacefully in Britain for decades. Mosques and churches sit on the same streets in cities across the country. Interfaith work is common. Many Christians engage generously in asylum and refugee support, offering practical help and friendship. Muslims do the same. The clash appears only when ignorance flourishes, and ignorance is exactly what Robinson cultivates. And he steps into an area which has been well prepared by the absurdities of Christian or of religious education in schools, the failure of religious education in schools. It's not about promoting particular creeds, it's about promoting an understanding of history and of literature. And we're not doing that. What we're doing is wasting time on PHSE and on trying to identify different parts of a mosque, different parts of a church, and what are these rites of passage, rather than looking at literature, rather than looking at history, which is what we should be doing. Because the religious traditions, the religious traditions of the great religions have informed and directed history, and particularly have informed the way Britain has developed as a country. And so to ignore that, which is what we are doing, is to invite some twit with half an understanding to lord it over his followers and to distort the reality, to distort reality. His crude attempt, ignorance is exactly what Robinson cultivates. His crude attempt to reprint the Quran in chronological order, as though Islam were a puzzle he alone could decode, was an act of intellectual vandalism. It betrayed no understanding of Islamic tradition, no respect for scholarship, no subtlety at all. I've looked at this rubbish. It was a clumsy intervention intended to irritate rather than illuminate. Islam deserves better than that, and so does Christianity. A real theological conversation between the two traditions would focus on shared moral commitments, historical entanglements, and mutual achievement, and looking to find the enrichment of both traditions through the common shared experience. Robinson's version is a pantomime quarrel rooted in a fear rather than theology. And the rise of Christian nationalism in parts of the UK is concerning not because Christianity is incompatible with political belief, but because it is incompatible with becoming a tribal badge of exclusion. What Bishop Aaron and others fear is that the church may lose its moral authority if it refuses to challenge this hijacking of its symbols. And the challenge for churches is not simple. They must welcome newcomers like Gareth from Bradford, who has wandered back into church life driven by cultural anxiety rather than doctrinal conviction. They must also protect those who feel threatened by the same movement. And they must do this without surrendering mercy, generosity, or justice. This is why Sunday services, poster campaigns, and open letters matter. The church must restate the truth. Christ has always been in Christmas. Outsiders are welcome, and Christianity's task is to defend the vulnerable, not to police the borders of national identity. The idea that Christ is not part of Christmas is absurd, given the fact that half of that word, Christmas, is his name in entirety. The other half is about the liturgy that is celebrated at the time, the Mass of Christmas. The storm around Robinson's threat to sue Farage is inconsequential. It's another turn of a familiar wheel. The real battle is not between Robinson and Reform, it's between two visions of our culture, two visions of Christianity, one rooted in compassion, dignity, and truth, and one repurposed for agitation, resentment, and cultural panic. There is no Christian future in Britain that emerges from hostility to Islam. There is no revival that begins with scapegoating. There is no path to faith in an environment saturated with misinformation and performance. Robinson's brand of Christian theatre may dominate headlines for another news cycle, but if the church is courageous, the country will remember a deeper truth. Christianity doesn't need rescuing by Robinson. It needs living, and living is an act of love, not an act of fear.